Joining me now is musician Joey Sykes, who has a new song called Let's Get Through This. Welcome to the show, Joey.
Hey, how's it going, Christian? How you doing?
I'm doing all right, thanks. Let's get right into it. Let's start with the song, which I think that's a sentiment that pretty much everybody in the audience can relate to. This idea that we can and will get through this, everything that we're going on, even if sometimes maybe it seems easier said than done.
Yeah. Well, I had this title about 2 years ago, and have like recordings of all song ideas and just little clips and guitar riffs and whatever. So I just had this. Every time I go through my songs, I kept going back to this. Let's get through this. It was on the guitar and vocal, and I never really finished the song. So when all this started coming up, I'm like, it's like 2 months ago, really started kicking in. And it just kind of inspired me to just knock it out, and make it really simple, uplifting. I didn't want to write a dark song because there's enough darkness going on. So that was it, man. I just like put my head into it, bogged down, and then I'm really happy the way it came out. And I think the message has been, you know, pretty well received. Let's put it that way. For as
Yeah,
far as a song.
definitely. And obviously the song is out, and you did one of those lyric videos, and I guess people can find all that stuff at Joey Sykes, SYKES.com, right? That's probably the best place to go to find everything.
You know what's funny? I didn't update my website, man.
So
So you,
that's not the place to go.
I mean, believe it or not, other than losing a bunch of gigs,
Yeah.
I've been so busy and
Yeah.
so staying so creative and just trying to do all, you know, promotion on the song. I know I should update it, but I don't do the update, and I got a website guy. So but it is up on YouTube, the lyric video, and the it's like an illustration, like you said, and it
Yeah.
was done by Scott Sachs. He did the video for me.
So what's the website guy doing that he's so busy right now? I feel
Yeah.
like he's not going outside. Would he go on vacation somewhere? But no,
That's
it's great. So yeah, you can find it. Just type in Joey Sykes on YouTube, and you can find it. I'll post a link to it when we
yeah.
post the interview. So obviously, you said the idea had been kicking around for a while, but let's kind of talk about how it does apply to today, and sort of like we have these people who we always think of certain people as being on the front lines, and we always
Mhm.
owe a lot to. That'd be like your firefighters, your police, your medical professionals. But now sort of like the front lines is almost everywhere outside of our door. Somebody delivers food to you, somebody
Right.
works especially people who work at the supermarket. I mean, there's so many people going in and out of there, and it's crazy to think about what the front lines are right now at this moment in 2020 versus honestly even 3 months ago.
That's right. And the cool thing is that since I've been promoting the song, getting it out there, people have been seeing it on, my Facebook fan page or whatever, YouTube. And some people have gotten back to me. Someone even sent me a TikTok video of somebody from an airline. Believe it or not, this is a true story. It's happening right now. Somebody from an airline put the song on and started dancing, like kind of like, and it's an airline guy, and
Sure, yeah.
so I got the name of who it was, contacted him, found him like on Facebook, and we got a little thing going now where he's going to shoot some proper video, and I'm going to make actually an alternate video of not only airline workers, but definitely nurses and doctors and respiratory therapists, and just try to put together an alternate video of everyone, like you said, on the, whatever front lines is, and just put, just everyday people really getting through this. And that's coming up probably in a couple of weeks. It should be edited and finished.
Oh, that sounds great. Yeah, so that'd be kind of a cool way to see it. And yeah, look, I mean, I don't live that far from an airport, and every time a plane flies overhead, I'm always like, where are people going? Where are they going? But obviously, people have to fly for a whole bunch of reasons, just
Right.
not as many reasons as like I said a couple months ago. So that's another thing to think about too. Absolutely,
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
having to be on the plane, and I mean, I assume that people who travel on the plane are not going to be any nicer than they used to be. So, it's the extra handful that you would always get. And of course, now it's like, that person decided not to wear a mask on this plane, so you got all that.
Yeah.
So I think it's great to have, like you said, it's an uplifting song. I was talking to somebody recently. It's just like, there's always a time for those dark and depressing songs. There's time for, post-apocalyptic movies with zombies and stuff. I don't want any of that right now.
Didn't want to do that. So
Yeah.
even like this past Saturday, there was a really cool telethon that went on in LA, and it was people like Rick Springfield, Paul Rogers, Carole King, all these Mickey Dolenz. It was like a 12-hour online telethon to raise money. It was a really nice event, and I was on it, and everyone kind of did like a minute speaking clip or whatever, and then like a lot of people played a song that they wrote, or a remake of a song. And my song, they played my video. I did a little video of me speaking, and then they played the video. And I think it was a really nice, and I've gotten some really nice response from that too. It was a nice departure, because a lot of people were doing more deep songs, and I don't know, and a lot of them were great. They were all great, but it's like I specifically wanted this to be kind of uplifting for a minute, with all the stuff going on, where you hear it and you go. It's even got like a reggaeton beat, like a reggae kind of feel, where reggae always makes you happy.
Sure. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, there's not the the Bob Marley album that's the bummer concept record. I mean, it's always like, yeah, let's have fun. Don't worry.
Exactly.
Now, just to sort of reading up on your past work a little bit. Obviously, great place to start is you're from New York originally. Now, whereabouts in New York did you grow up, and when did you come to LA?
I grew up in Long Island, New York. And basically, I had been in LA from like being 19 years old. I started coming to LA through bands, but I've been living here for about the last 15 years. Different things had taken me to LA. In the late 90s, I was here playing with Meredith Brooks. And
she's for people who remember the name, but it might take a second. She had that song "Bitch," which honestly still shows up in movies to this day. You know what I mean?
Great song.
There's still always that one movie where it's like, well, this will be funny if we use that song. So that's when I saw that in there, I'm like, oh, I don't even know how many times I've heard that song. You've probably heard it a few more times than me, though.
Well, the funny thing is, we would go to Europe and be in places that don't speak great English, but they go as soon as they hear that song, whether I don't know what they're singing, but it just it's one of those kind of songs, So that was like in the late 90s. And then I was also playing with a friend of mine, Tommy Henriksen, who plays in guitar for Alice Cooper and Hollywood Vampires.
Yeah.
So he's a good friend of mine. So I played with him too. So like I kind of took a little departure from New York in the late 90s to do those things, and then went back to New York, and then came back here for good, like 2005, like that kind of vibe.
Yeah, and Tommy Henriksen, he's great. I think he's from Long Island too, unless I'm mistaken. Yeah. So
we go back.
Yeah, exactly. So, and what I love about him is, you mentioned not only does he play with Alice Cooper, but he's in the Hollywood Vampires. And when you look, you see like the stage. It's Alice, it's Joe Perry, and it's Johnny Depp, and there's Tommy, and you're like, that guy definitely belongs with them. You know what I mean? It's
totally.
It's not like he's out of place on that. And I actually went to the first Hollywood Vampire show, and so at that point it was before Guns N' Roses got back together. So it was Duff McKagan was in the band at that point too. Yeah. So it was sort of like literally the all-star band, and so he's great. So
guy.
Yeah. So when and when was it that you worked with Tommy? That was like in the late 90s too. That was before he worked with Alice.
A record deal on Capitol. He had a record out on Capitol Records, and it was kind of one of those things where there was a song called "I See the Sun" that was in a movie, Blast from the Past, actually, and so I think Capitol. I don't really know. I was in with them from the beginning of that, and I really don't think they had a plan beyond that song. I think they just really thought that song, because it's an amazing song, amazing album, and I think they just assumed it was just going to kind of go in a really great way,
Yeah,
and,
sure.
It was a struggle a little bit, but I still think that could have been really a great song and great album for him. But
now, earlier in your career, I think you did you were sort of like one of those staff songwriters, right? And you hear about people who do that. Did you just write a lot of songs that, that are still sitting in an archive, or did you write stuff that ended up, being kind of a big song by somebody we might know?
You know, that's one thing in my long career that I've done so many different things that's been able to elude me is the having that one, hit
Sure.
song that I
Yeah.
can tell you, oh, I wrote that. I
Yeah.
mean, I've had a lot of songs in TV shows and films and some big shows. Daddy Day Camp with Cuba Gooding Jr.
Sure.
I had a song in that movie that was a really nice spot. It was like they played 2 minutes of one of my songs with no dialogue. It was like just kept. I was in the theater and I and when you have a song in a film or a TV, you don't really know how much they're gonna play. They don't really
Yeah.
tell you. You just gotta. Am I even gonna hear it? Am I gonna have to go like, oh, I think that was it? Like there's those moments. So I'm sitting in the theater and the song comes on, and it was like this scene where Cuba Gooding Jr. is doing like fast motion, building go karts, and they just played my song up all the way up to the guitar solo. So it was like
Yeah.
2 minutes of my song. I'm like, it just kept going on. I'm like, this is amazing.
It's like they took a break from the movie to stick a music video right in the middle, which that's great. Yeah, a lot of just as a music fan, sometimes there'll be these great movie soundtracks and you're like, oh, this band I like's in it. And you'll see the movie and it's like, was that song even in it? And then you see the movie again, and it's like, oh yeah, a car drove by and you hear the song very faintly, like it plays for like 8 seconds, So sometimes you have to really look for the songs, but that's getting 2 full minutes, that doesn't usually happen.
That doesn't happen often. No.
Yeah. So lately, I know that you've been working with the well-known, the legendary band, the Babies. How did that happen that you started working with them? And is that something that's still going on, or where are you at on that right now?
The Babies, 2 original guys in the Babies, Tony Brock, the drummer, and Wally Stocker, the guitar player. They're on every single Babies track ever.
Right.
It's Tony on drums and Wally on guitar. So the DNA of the Babies is in those 2 guys. So somewhere I forget 2014 maybe. Those 2 guys got the band kind of back together, and they wanted to do a studio album. So somebody brought me in more as a songwriter, just to write like that one kind of singly kind of song. Sure. And so one thing led to another, and they just said, why don't you just join the version of the band and play with us live? And it's such a great catalog of songs. So there's a new version of the Babies with a new singer, another John Basaha, and we do some touring and stuff. We got a bunch of gigs pulled out recently. We were supposed to be on a cruise, one of those cruises, and some road stuff and some local stuff I think got pulled. But recently we put out a greatest hits anthology too, which has all the anthology songs and a couple of new ones, and then there's the studio record remixed. It's like a double album, double CD, or whatever. So that's out there now.
Yeah, well, look, you referenced performing live, and there's those big theme cruises. You have the really big ones. You have like your Monsters of Rock. I know Kiss does a cruise every year. You hear about all those, and it's hard to. It's sort of like the themed cruises. That's 2 industries that you're wondering about when they're going to recover. And
right.
Performing live is a whole other issue. I mean, what you hear a lot is, sure, your smaller venues are probably going to open first, and you're going to have people stay kind of far apart, but as you sit here right now, I mean, what is today? April 25th, 26th? I forget exactly, but right here at the end of April, just sort of getting assessment. I mean, what are you hearing? I mean, are you hearing anything encouraging, or is it just the way it seems to me as somebody on the outside? It seems like nobody really knows. You have people that hope. You see that bands have rescheduled dates for the fall, but you don't even really know for sure that can happen.
Yeah, and your instincts on what you're hearing is the same thing I am.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. I'm in my mind, like, thank God I have my recording studio is on my property. So I basically, other than my losing live gigs and work, which is really important, but
Sure.
Other than that, I've been so productive and creative, and I got so much stuff going on. It's ridiculous. I mean, I even started to learn how to make my own videos. Like I'm starting on iMovie, because every time I want to make a music video or a lyric video, I got to like recruit somebody and pay somebody. And I'm like, no more. Especially now I got this time.
As we've already established, don't ask your website guy to help you, because clearly he's not somebody that you can count on.
That's all me, man.
So no, I think that's great. And look, you're seeing a lot of creative people, whether it's musicians or, you see talk show hosts are doing their show from their house. I mean, the stuff that I do, I'm lucky right now. My wife and kids are outside. Usually I have this little back room in the back of my garage that I can hide in, and do interviews. But it's kind of great that the technology is what it is. And
Yeah.
whatever it is that you do, most of us are still able to kind of do it. And honestly, I mean, I'm getting way more opportunities. You and I are chatting right now, which is great. And,
Yeah.
just because everybody's home, you're having to find these other ways. So look, I can't wait till I can just go outside and, have even a semi-normal day. But while we're, mostly spending time inside, it is kind of this great way that you find yourself oddly meeting new people and getting closer with your neighbors, your strangers, everything, just because what else are you going to do? You're in your
I know.
house.
And it's weird because especially living in California, you want to go out. You want to.
Yeah.
I mean, this weekend was killer, but it's like, we didn't do anything. We just kind of hung, and I'm, my wife's working at home. I'm working at home, and we, just make dinner or whatever. But it's like you want to do those things, and I'm sure some kind of normalcy is gonna kick in. Maybe might take longer than we all thought it would be, and
Yeah.
I think the summer is gonna get salvaged a little bit. Not. I don't think it's gonna be total. And as far as live shows with bands, like stuff with the babies, I mean, in my mind, I'm pretending it's not there. So
Yeah.
when the call comes in or the dates get booked, I'll be maybe happy, or I'm sure I will be. But on one hand, I don't know if I want to get on a plane right now. Like,
Yeah.
but if I had to, I definitely don't want to go on a cruise. I mean, I
Yeah.
hate to say that, whatever, for cruise ships, I feel bad, but I mean, there's a long list of who everyone feels bad for, and cruise ships are probably down there.
Yeah, look, the companies who run cruise ships, and look, there were concerns, going back years before this, where people,
Exactly.
the one person gets sick on a cruise, you have to worry about it. So yeah, I know there's like I mentioned, there's those huge theme music cruises, which always sound like they're fun, and I'm sure they are. But it's like if people can't be relatively sure that they're healthy, but then you take it out of the cruising industry, it's like if you can't even go to like a mid-sized venue, like here in LA, like if you can't feel comfortable that you can go to like the Wiltern, or even like, well, I was gonna say the Whiskey a Go-Go, but that place is too small. So I feel like everybody would be herded in there. You'd have to have like an occupancy of like 30 at like the Whiskey. But being able to go to any venue, I mean, us as fans, you as performers, it's like, well, okay, how clean is their backstage area? How clean is this or that? How clean is the stage? And then the car service that picks you up, or the hotel that just, all that stuff. It's when you start talking about it, you just pull on one little thread and it all unravels, and you're like, oh yeah, I don't see how any of it happens. And there's huge, gigantic tours that are scheduled for this year that still aren't canceled. And when you look at it, you're like, I guess promoters and Ticketmaster and stuff just want to hang on to the money as long as they can, but you just can't imagine that come in like September, that people are going to be in a football stadium and seeing bands perform.
Yeah, well, I mean, you could sanitize surfaces
Yeah.
and that'll be great. But what is missing is who has it? How how am I going to get it from somebody maybe who has it and doesn't know? Is it gonna pop up in a month from now? Can it stay inside? All these questions that no one has answers to, because even the professionals, everyone's complaining about someone else, what they're saying and what professional and blah 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 and president blah blah blah, but no one knows. So to just say like this is the way it's going to be, that's why everyone's being really cautious, because no one knows. I mean, you can keep wiping surfaces. I don't feel threatened in a supermarket. I have double mask on,
Right.
gloves.
Sure.
I'm not in front of anybody, so I'm just getting my stuff, putting it in the wagon. I don't feel like, man, what did I just go through?
Yeah.
But is that
Yeah,
life?
no, exactly. And I mean, that's the thing too. I mean, you're talking about like people not knowing. It's, early on people were comparing this to like the flu. Here's the difference. Like if I met you, we were doing this in a studio right now and I had the flu, I'd know I had the flu. And I'm like, oh yeah, no, I let's just,
Exactly.
I'm not going to shake your hand, and all that. But now it's like, oh yeah, I don't know. I feel fine today. Who knows? So, yeah. Anyway, let's shift over to something more fun. I wanted to find out more about Honey River. So that's a band that's an homage to 70s California, like country rock. And I'm kind of wondering, what are some bands from that genre that inspired you, and talk about how that band is a celebration of that kind of scene.
Well, I started going, songwriting for me, first and foremost, is really what I spend probably like my whole life on, just trying to write great songs, really spend a lot of time on lyrics and stuff. So in the last 10, 12 years, I started to go to Nashville a lot. I got a bunch of friends down there that are pretty successful and great songwriters. And so just based on going there for so long, I started piling up these songs that were really good that weren't on anybody's record, and sometimes a Nashville demo singer would sing on one. So then a couple of years ago I said, you know what, I know so many great people in LA, and I have my studio, and drummers like Steve Ferroni, and that I work with. I said, I'm just going to put a band together, like my vision was to have three guys that all sang and play instruments, kind of like an Eagles, like Jackson Brown, Eagles, Tom
Sure,
Petty,
yeah.
like that kind of sound in a modern way, and where everyone could share lead vocals like the Eagles do. 1 second Fry was singing, then Henley, then Timothy, then Walsh. I love that. I think that's genius, to where as a watching you live, where you could switch gears and it'd be a whole new thing in 5 minutes, like this is a Walsh song and that's amazing. Then Henley will get back on, so I always loved that blueprint, so then I just started putting a thing together. It's not quite where I want it to be, and I didn't even release the record, but I finished a bunch of songs, and still need some tweaking on the project. And now that I can't play live, it's just kind of on hold right now, but
Yeah, but no, it definitely seems like it's. I like sort of the thing that you latched onto. Yeah, bands where everybody sings. It's funny. I mean, obviously, it's hard to compare anything to the Beatles. But the funny thing about the Beatles is like George Harrison's this great, amazing singer songwriter, and you don't even know it for like 5-6 years. You know what I mean? And it's just like, oh yeah, we got this guy too. And look, Ringo has some fun songs too. I don't want to sell him out, but at the same time, it's like and that's the thing about some of these bands. It's like, sometimes a front man is so big that you don't even think about like, yeah, but look how everybody else is. And yeah, the Eagles, that's a perfect example of, like everybody has their songs in there. When I was reading through the list of some of the artists you've shared a stage with, actually you mentioned Don Henley in there. There's a couple of names that jump out at me. Just growing up a huge Kiss fan, I want to immediately ask you about when did you work with Paul Stanley, and what was that situation?
So Paul Stanley was, he was, I was in a band when I was like 17, 18, right out of high school. And we were down in the Caribbean, St. Thomas. And he was down there. He was playing or something. I think there was a stadium, or was it Puerto Rico? Puerto Rico, yeah. And somebody knew him and brought him to the club that we were playing at. So we started talking about, New York and Queens and everything. And he jumped up on stage with us and did Strutter. And I think it was Strutter. Yeah.
That's cool.
And it was great, because he was singing like he was at Madison Square Garden. He was like, Strutter.
Yeah.
It's like, I was this little kid going, oh my God, this is crazy.
Yeah. It's funny because when you hear recordings of Paul singing, throughout the 80s and into the 90s, just these like, it was almost like he was showing off like all these crazy notes he has, and
his vocal lessons were kicking in.
Yeah, exactly. And you hear about people like Steve Perry, and Paul's a good example. People who get older and they're like, well, yeah, I don't sing like that anymore. It's like, it's funny when you're just like, yeah, I can't imagine that one day you're like, yeah, I can't even get close to that anymore. But it's so crazy to hear. I'm not going to go through the whole list of everybody, but it's such a wide. He's the one that jumped out at me. Just that's why I asked. But has there been anybody that you've ended up, maybe even a situation like that? And again, you said you were a kid when that happened, so that was probably pretty crazy. Have there been moments where obviously you're professional, you're going to play, that's not the issue, but where you have to like actually take a step back and like think like, I can't believe I'm playing with so-and-so right now,
Well, the two moments in my career, I mean, there's been so many really cool moments. I would say the two moments that really stick out was when I was with Meredith Brooks. We opened up for the Eurythmics at the Garden, Madison Square Garden, and the Staples Center.
Sure.
So we did 2
Okay.
shows with them. So, being on the Garden stage from New York is just doesn't really go anywhere from there for me. Like what am I gonna do now? Like so. My mother like front row center, my brother, and like playing a solo on that stage, and that's surreal. That doesn't even make sense sometimes. And
Yeah,
then
especially when you think of the, when you walk into the Garden, there used to always be pictures of like, Ace Frehley, Jimmy Page, people
yeah,
playing on the same stage you played
definitely.
on,
Yeah.
so it's like you probably walked right under that, and then you're like, yeah, and I'm doing the same thing. I could see that being pretty crazy. Sure. Yeah.
Oh, it's in the hallways backstage. I studied those. I'm like, you see like that
Yeah.
classic Robert Plant with the
Yeah.
microphone
That's the
and
one I'm thinking of. Yeah.
insane. So
Yeah.
even the sound check gives you, like we were on messing with amps, and it's all union. So they're like, if they want to stop at 5 o'clock after sound check, you got to you can't move anything. It's pretty
Right.
fun. But just messing with your amp on the on the Garden stage is just like so heavy.
Yeah. Well, I almost
What a
feel
gig
like
he was.
sound check might be crazier because the lights are on and you can actually see how big it is. And you're like, yeah, all these people are going to be here later on watching me. So yeah, I could imagine. Well,
For us, we were doing the sound check, and Annie Lennox is walking around with like a scarf, and so the Garden is empty, and you see her walking around, and she takes a seat like 40th row. It's just crazy, man.
yeah.
And the other one really quickly is I auditioned for Don Henley.
Oh,
So
cool.
in like 99, 2000, he was looking for a second guitar player, and there was only like 4 or 5 people who auditioned, I think, and I didn't get it, but I got to play like 8 songs with him and his band, and that was great, like harmonizing with him and everything. And so that was another moment where I was like, this is just nutty.
Yeah, no, just to be in that moment. Yeah, I mean, look, me, I'm completely a non-musician, but when I was in college, I interned at Conan O'Brien's TV show, and they were doing camera blocking for Elton John was going to be on, and he obviously doesn't do camera blocking, but they needed somebody to sit at the piano, so they had me sit at his piano. So they would be doing all the camera movements and cutting, and you could see on the monitors, there's just me sitting at Elton John's piano while these guys are playing Saturday Night's All Right for Fighting. And I always think
Wow.
like, how fun would it have been if I sang along, but I was worried, but it just sometimes, yeah, when, again, not even remotely, look, here's the thing. If I had sang along, they would have kicked me out probably because I'm a singer. But yeah, so even sometimes when you're not a musician and you end up in something like that, you're like, this is crazy, So
That's great.
Joey, it's been delightful to get a chance to talk to you, and I'm glad we had the chance to meet. Unfortunately, we got to meet because we can't go outside, but I really want people to look for Let's Get Through This. You mentioned you could just type in Joey Sykes on YouTube, and your website is joeysykes.com when people do want to find you. Look, they'll find out when you're going back out there, whenever that might be, what's going on with the babies and Honey River. So that sounds like the great thing is that you're talking about, you're so busy right now that because you have all these projects in there, it's great to have something to keep you busy, and for people that are just listening, Joey's sitting in a recording studio right now. So there's no shortage of things you could do as soon as we click off from this interview,
Yeah, and the quick thing is like to get the highlights. I mean, if you subscribe to my YouTube channel, that's going to probably be getting a lot of action since I just learned how to make my own videos. So, you just go on, I guess, Joey Sykes music videos and subscribe to that.
Yeah.
And then my Instagram is Joey Sykes 903.
Is that
So,
because there were 902 other Joey Sykes before you, or?
and my birthday.
Oh, there you go. Well, again, Joey, it was great to talk to you. JoeySykes.com, SYKES. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Christian. Have a great time.
You too.